So I get a lot, and I mean a lot, of exotic ideas in the comment section of these videos, but never have I seen such a glorious piece of text as was submitted by this anonymous user, who submitted the idea of the Lord of Dead Man's two-tailed eyes of Salvathun's last whisper of Ariana's fourth ruinous Wardcliff Xeno Jotun Moonsplitters chosen of Acrius last wish burden simulant Mida tool multi of spades perfected +1. Art. Welcome back, Guardians, to another TDT video. I'm your humble host, Meeson777. In this series of videos, if you guys are new to the channel, which if you are, hello, hi, nice to meet you. What we do is we essentially take exotic ideas from you guys in the comment section. If you're a subscriber, you leave a comment. We have a high likelihood of reading said comment as I try to do my best to like and heart and just generally scan through every single comment that comes through as to the best of my ability. And if it's a really, really good idea, you'll get it featured possibly in the next week's exotic ideas video. So if you have a really cool exotic idea, drop it in the comments and you might get it featured in next week's video. Let's break into the exotics, just get straight into it. Last week we were planning on doing all 5 featured exotics, like just sort of like a 10th episode special, but we ended up doing something a little bit different where I actually showed you what I do in order to make the exotics. So if you want to see how that works, go check that video out. But this time around, we're actually going to do what I was planning on doing originally, which is to feature nothing but exotic ideas from you guys in the community. So enough jabberjawn, let's jump right into it. I'm sure some of you are already bored of me talking and not talking about some exotics. The first exotic comes from you guys have probably seen them around, Risk Runner. Yeah, these gun profiles are starting to scare me as they seem to be holding some kind of coup. I'm pretty sure there's enough of them now that they could overthrow a few comment sections. Their exotic idea was the Rasputins Valkyrie. The essential idea that they're trying to go for with this is, what if Arc Staff could be thrown like a spear, like the Rasputins Valkyrie spear that you get within the campaign? What if we could do that just on a super? And I think that that's an interesting idea. He wanted it to be gauntlets, but I think that's the wrong way to take it. Instead, I think that it should be a chest plate, as you can see here. Now, before I read the lore, before I read the flavor text on this, I want to let you know that every single time we do these, I try to jam in as many references to other games, media, art, whatever it may be, as much as possible. I believe there are 6 this time around. Maybe, no, there might be 7. I'll leave a number on the screen when I go back and do this editing later. Flavor text for this reads, "There lived a certain man in Russia long ago." If you can catch that reference and every other reference, I will pin your comment in the comment section, all right? Maybe get your friends to help you out with this, because there's a few of them that are a little bit more obscure. The exotic perk for this is the Bon 13-M. Pressing heavy attack in air now throws the arc staff in the direction you are facing. So it's a very straightforward idea. When you're in the air and you have arc staff, when you press the heavy attack, instead of slamming you down to the ground, it will now throw it like a spear, allowing you to get a little bit of range off this. I wondered what we could do if we could do something like increased damage and such, but then I remembered that with the middle tree arc staff, the spin to win, if you block damage, it then deals triple the amount of arc staff damage. So if this arc staff that we throw, the spear version of this that we throw, is dealing the same amount of damage as it would if you were to do a heavy slam, that could be a lot of damage from a safe distance. So I think it's okay right now just to not give this any further buffs, just allow this to be a little bit different. I love the idea behind this. A lot of you have suggested a spear type weapon. I think Risk Runner here had the best idea of making it on the arc staff, making it an exotic. I took the liberty of making it only when you're in the air and doing the heavy attack, which I think is fine. You guys can let me know what you think as well. Love this idea. Let's get on to the rest of them. Just as a quick note, if you are on mobile and you want to see the exotics just as they're coming up, the timestamps will be in the description. So if you're just looking to just kind of skip through each of the exotics, as I've seen how the analytics work, a lot of you just kind of jump to each exotic. Check the timestamps in the description. You'll be able to skip around per each exotic. Our next exotic idea comes from the user 77 Swords. Their idea is that they essentially want to give the Titans the ability to fire a bolt of lightning like Zeus's thunderbolts rather than actually throwing a lightning grenade, which I think is hilariously fun because it essentially allows you to tag somebody for instant damage from across the map. So what I came up for this here is called the Olympian. They are obviously, like we talked about, Titan Gauntlets. The flavor text for this reads, "Nothing but wars upon wars until we shall perish every one." The exotic perk is called Thunderstruck. Transforms lightning grenades into a single bolt of arc energy. Dealing melee damage to multiple targets in a short period, grants bonus concussion, and staggers unshielded combatants. So one of the things I want to make sure I flesh out on this one particular is how this would actually work. The commentator proposed that they would squeeze the lightning bolt grenade and then fire it like that, but I think it would be cooler if the Titan essentially raised his arm as if he were firing it like a cannon, like he was getting ready to fire his fist like a cannon, and then have the lightning grenade fire out of that. Very similar to how you might see in something like Titanfall or Apex Legends when you're aiming a grenade with somebody like Fuse. So you would actually raise your arm up and get actually kind of like a little sight on your arm itself, and then when you would release the button, it would fire it. This would fire essentially across the map a long-range lightning bolt grenade. So it would deal the same amount of damage. It's not enough to one-shot kill a Guardian, but it does a lot of damage. And in order to make this very viable in things like PvE, because we want to make sure the things that we design are both viable in PvP and PvE, we gave it essentially the treatment that the Arthritis Embrace got, which is if you do a certain thing, then it's able to deal, let's say, more damage, have another effect, or be able to interact with champions, which in this case, Titans being the kings of punching stuff, we gave them the ability that if they can get a bunch of punches together all at once, then their Thunderstruck lightning bolt grenades will actually concuss targets and will cause that stagger effect, allowing you to stop unstoppable champions. I think this is a really cool idea. I would love to see Titans have more of these ability-focused exotics rather than having them just deal like get +1 of this or deal more damage to that. I think this is a really cool way to do it. Maybe I'm just a Warlock main. I don't know. Let me know what you think of this one. I like this idea a lot. Continuing with this idea, it seems like this seems to be a common thread this time around. Deputy Dumpling came up with the idea of Warlock arms that turn celestial fire into a close-range flamethrower. And if you guys have been fans of the channel for a while, you guys know I like blowing stuff up, and this sounds like a great way to do some really precise blowing upping. So, the exotic that we came up here is called the Forbidden Gaze, or obviously Warlock Gauntlets. The flavor text for this reads, Sorcerer of Dreadful Power, Master of Shadows. The exotic perk is called Ishtari. Dawnblade melee abilities now cast a stream of solar energy that drain melee energy the longer the melee is held. Continually damaging a target causes overload. So the same idea with interacting with champions as we saw from the last time. So if you keep this pinned on a target for a period of time, it'll then overload them, which allows them to deal with champions. I think that we need to start including more champion related things into our armor pieces if, we're going to continue to use champions in most of the PvE activities. And of course, the base effect of it is pretty interesting as well. I want to make note that if you are able to hold this melee on a target, let's say that it would take roughly 3 seconds. Does that sound fair? If you can hold this melee out for the full 3 seconds on a PvP target, so another Guardian, it would kill that Guardian. I think that that's a fair trade-off, as effectively what you're capable of doing is having essentially kind of like a backup weapon whenever you need it. The amount of damage that it would deal would be decently high. Maybe we could even make it deal damage just a little bit faster in order to keep it competitive. And another thing I want to throw out here is that depending on which you actually end up running with, so if you run top, middle, or bottom tree, this will actually have a different effect. So something like top tree will have longer range, let's say, middle tree will cause that empowering effect to you and nearby allies, and bottom tree will cause damage over time, allowing this to be a very, very deadly tool. I think in particular that bottom tree would have the best time making use of this because the burn effects are kind of like what it's built around. And all in all, like, it's a flamethrower from the tips of your fingers. Tell me that doesn't sound like fun. And of course, it also plays really well into giving you some options for dealing with champions and such. So all in all, an excellent idea. Let's keep going. Our next featured exotic is from a fan who's been, I've seen their comments on a lot of different videos. I'm probably gonna slaughter the name. It's Hayo, I believe it is, 784. Their idea is that they want to make a stasis sword, which honestly, I'm a little bit ashamed that I didn't come up with the idea myself because duh, why don't we have a stasis sword? Holy crap. The sword is called the Blue Rose. The flavor text reads, roses are a miraculous flower that bear fruit with the most sacred energy. Now, they claim this is a reference. This one went right over my head. So maybe some of you who are a little bit wiser or a little bit more edumacated might be able to catch what this reference is. The exotic intrinsic perk for this is called Armament. Heavy attacks slam this weapon into the ground, freezing a large area around you. So essentially, it replaces your heavy attack with a wide AoE of essentially an instant snap freeze. Now, of course, that can be a really powerful effect. So I'm seeing that this would have to be cast at full sword energy in order for it to have the maximum radius of freeze. Otherwise, it would be like, let's say, rift size. But if it's full charge, let's say that it's like well of radiance sized. So there's kind of the difference in how much you're actually able to freeze targets. So obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is this is a great tool for comboing in with your other stasis abilities. And then on top of that, we give it the exotic perk Full Control. Freezing targets while wielding this weapon heals you and nearby allies. I want to allow this to essentially play into itself if you are using stasis subclasses. So if you're just wielding this weapon as normal, and let's say that you throw a cold snap grenade, you could freeze targets and get a little bit of health back, allowing you to be able to stay alive a little bit better and stay in the fight a little bit better. I'm wondering if this would be good to essentially have it deal extra damage to frozen targets, but I feel like a lot of exotics already kind of do that idea, like we are already kind of built into that idea, so maybe that might be a bit much. Also, I could see an instance where, you know, if that did have that perk instead of the current perk, where it would just be like the obvious choice over something like Lament for damage perhaps, or it would be in direct competition, which we don't want to make exotics that directly compete with one another. We want to give them niches that they try to fill, right? So I think this is a better niche for it to go with. I love this idea. I think this is a really solid, well-rounded idea. And like I said, I'm a little ashamed that I didn't come up with the idea of a stasis exotic sword first, but props to you, Hayo. That was an excellent choice of weapon. Let's roll on to our last exotic. Our last exotic comes from a new subscriber to the channel. I've never seen him before, but man, does he have some really good ideas. The idea he has here is that he wants an exotic grenade launcher that just shoots cannonballs in the special ammo slot. And instead of having like a blast radius, it just has impact. So obviously this is a 10 out of 10 idea. So here's what I've got for you. This is called the Buccaneer. It is a kinetic multi-shot grenade launcher, as in like not like multi-shot in terms of like it fires multiples at once, but multi-shot like how your heavy weapon grenade launchers would work. So, you know, it has multiple in the chamber that you can fire at once. This is in the rapid fire archetype, so 150 rounds per minute. As you can see here, like I mentioned from the stats, it doesn't actually have a blast radius, it just has an impact. So it wouldn't actually detonate when it hits the ground, it would just cause just generic damage. Now, the flavor text for this reads, "Oh, they're gonna have to glue you back together." I know that was terrible. Don't. I did it for the memes, okay? Don't. Just pretend like that never happened. The exotic perk is called Iron Bomber. Fires high impact slugs that deal more damage to unshielded targets. And the exotic perk is called Loose Cannon. Quick, successive, critical hits on unshielded targets grants increased rate of fire and reload speed. So, the idea behind this is that this is essentially like a long-range slug shotgun, maybe with less overall damage because it obviously has a bit more range, but it gives you the flexibility of being able to hit targets from a much further range away. Obviously, this would take special ammo as this sits in the kinetic slot. It only holds 4, as you can see it has 4 barrels here, similar to how like the Fourth Horseman would work. And the idea is that if this was a boss damage phase, and you can continue to sink some shots into the target, you would be able to increase the amount of damage that this is capable of doing, let's say slightly better than a Vorpal weapon slug shotgun, just slightly. Obviously, like the first magazine would have to go into the target first before you would actually be able to, you know, get the bonus DPS from it. But once you got that bonus DPS going with the increased rate of fire and reload speed, then it would surpass its Vorpal weapon slug shotgun brethren. In terms of PvP, what I'm thinking for this is that if you are capable of hitting a target in the body, it would deal, let's say, 130 to 140 damage. But if you're able to hit the target in the head, then it will insta-kill them outright. I'm even willing to consider making this just straight up kill a target if you hit them in the body, but I could see that getting a little bit annoying. The only thing that I'm kind of like willing to kind of let this work with is that the velocity and the aim that you would have to do in order to really make this land on targets and deal damage and such would be relatively difficult. Anyway, like I said, if you like this type of stuff, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment down below, and if your exotic idea is good enough, you might get it featured in the next exotic video that we end up doing. Hope you guys enjoyed this stuff. Leave a like, all that other YouTube BS. Bless your faces, and deuces.